Hello.
Yes, sir. Please go.
Are you?
Thank you, Joshua, for giving me this wonderful opportunity. And you are doing a very excellent job by giving so much knowledge, sharing the knowledge to so many people. And I congratulate you. And let me go to the topic. You all have come across so many organizations which are doing charity work by way of providing educational assistance and medical assistance, skill development, and some organizations even focus on particular issues like students' education and like women upliftment and environment and so on. So these organizations are called as non-government organizations or otherwise called as NGOs. So these organizations run parallelly along with the government. When I say it's run parallelly along with the government, the immediate question that comes to everyone's mind is like, why is it not the responsibility of the government to take care of the welfare of all citizens of India? Yes, of course it is. But the country like India, where there is an explosion of population and non-uniformity of the disbursement of the funds, and there is a discrimination between in economic wise, the people as upper class and lower class, wherein the people having economically viable people will get everything, and those who were deprived did not get even their basic rights. So some organizations came forward to lend their helping hand to these deprived sect of society. So this was encouraged and supported by the government. So these NGOs were encouraged and supported by the government of India. So I want to I want to talk about the NGO and how it is started and so on. So I would like to share the screen. I request Joshua to allow me to share the screen.
Ma'am, you have been given the access, ma'am. You can share.
Is it now? Everyone
Yes,
can see the screen. Okay.
Yes, ma'am. Yes.
So let us see, what is a non-government organization? It's also referred as a non-profit. So the organizations which doesn't make any profit are called as a non-government organization or otherwise called as NPOs. So it is like I said, it's a organization that fills the gaps between the government and the society, wherein the government cannot satisfy everybody's needs. So some organizations came forward to help them. So it is a gap between the government and the society. So a non-government organization is a non-profit, voluntary, voluntarily citizens group, which is legally constituted organization and operated on the local, national, or international level. So the basic objective is not to make any profit, and it should be a voluntary citizens group. And legally constituted is it has to be registered in the as per the law by way of different ways. I will talk about it later. They are task oriented and driven by people with a common interest. So there should be some purpose of starting up this organization. So they should focus on those organizations which should be of common interest, and some are organized around the specific issues like human rights, environment, health, rehabilitation. So what is the role of the non-government organizations? So let us see that it plays a major critical role, because now there are around 34 lakhs of NGOs in India. So majority of the people, deprived people were taken care, and also some of the issues have been taken care by these NGOs. So they focus mainly on the humanitarian, educational, healthcare, public policy, social welfare, human rights, environmental, and other areas indeed. As these are the areas where India is now facing so much of issues. So next is, how can an NGO be formed? This is the most critical part, where most of the people doesn't know how to, because many people have the urge of serving the community, but they don't know how to do it in a properly manner. So these are the things, it can be started. A non-government is a non-government or which is charitable objective. First thing, they should have a charitable objective. So next one is, it is for the betterment. The purpose is to serve the community. first is the object is to have a charity. That means they should not make any profit, and the purpose is to serve the community. So it can be started either as a trust or as a society or a non-profit company, which is called as Section 8 company. So these are the three factors that through which you can start this, you can form the NGOs. Next is like, what is a trust? So trust is a legal entity created by a trustor. Like there will be one trustor or otherwise called a settler who transfers the assets to the second party or trustee for the benefit of the third party or the beneficiary. So trustor, like if you have fund or resources in your hand, if you want to do something to the community, you have to form a trust. So the person who is intending to form a trust is called as a trustor, and the person on whose name the assets were transferred or called as trustees, and the parties like the third party who are the beneficiaries, that are the deprived people or for which the trust has been formed, and the people to whom the work of the trust is going to there. So those people are called as beneficiary. So the main object of forming a trust is to help and support the deprived sections of the society, as well as for other objects as the trustees deem fit. Like trustees will have certain ideas of serving to the community, so they can also implement that in the trust deed. So this is governed by the Indian Trust Act of 1982. Next is society. So what is a society? A society is an entity that can be created by a group of individuals united in their cause for promoting science, arts, literature, social welfare, and useful information. In addition, societies work for the common agenda for mutual benefit of the members. So, see, it's in a commonly found societies that, see, most of the people are living will be living in the apartments or in a area where they used to form a society to serve for the benefit of their members, like who are living in the same community. So it is called as, so it is a common agenda for mutual benefit of each of the members. So societies are governed by the Societies Registration Act. So that means it is governed means that society after forming the society, it has to be registered under the Societies Registration Act of 1860 or any other state act. Few states will have their own act, so it has to be registered under the Societies Registration Act. Next is the non-profit company. So it's usually the company, regular companies will make profit as per the Companies Act. This non-profit Section 8 company is similar to the trust or the society. The same objectives: to promote arts, science, commerce, sports, social welfare, religion, charity, and environmental protection. And they should be registered under the Companies Act of 2013. This is mainly for the charitable purpose. There should not be any profit making. So to know more about, see, let us have a comparative study of the trust, society, and Section 8 company. So trust is governed by the Trust Act of each state. Each state will have their own act. So it will be governed by the Trust Act. Whatever has been made as a clause, a section in the Trust Act, that has to be implemented in the a deed, whatever they are going to make it as a document for registration under the Trust Act. So next is the society. Similarly, the Societies Registration Act or the state law will govern the society. Next is Section 8 company. This is governed by the Companies Act of 2013. See, when you see for forming the trust, so how many members are required? So for forming the trust, minimum of 3 and maximum of 21 members are required. And for forming the society, minimum of 7 members and the maximum is unlimited. And for Section 8 company, minimum of 2 directors or the shareholders. So the jurisdiction where it has to be registered. So where the office of the trust is situated, So it has to be registered before the sub-register or the district registrar in that particular area. And similarly to the society where the registered office of the society is situated. So it has to be registered in the district registrar in the particular area. So section 8 company can be registered through online. Next is, what is the document required for registration? The document which is required for registration under the trust is called as a trust deed, which will have the name of the trustees and name of the settlor and the trustees and the mode of election of the trustees, change in the trustees, and the purpose of the trust deed. So all will be documented and it has to be registered as a trust deed. And similarly for the society, it is called as a memorandum of association or bylaws of the association. So the memorandum of association will carry all the definitions and the memorandum of the particular like for the purpose and the objectives. Everything will come under the memorandum of the association. And the bylaws consist of the administration process and of the association. So these two documents has to be registered and in the societies under the Societies Registration Act in the sub-registrar office of that particular area. So next is section A company is MOA, that is Memorandum of Association and Articles of Association. Like it is similar to the society, that is memorandum will carry the definitions, object and the purpose for which the company has been started, and the Articles of Association will have the rules and regulations and the administration process. So this has to be registered under the Companies Act. So let us see the board. The trust, the founder or author, the board should be is the founder or the author of the trust, and the managing trustees, treasurer, auditor, etc. These people will form the board of the trust. And for the society, so it's like the executive committee members. They are called as the executive committee members, which consists of president, secretary, vice president, treasurer, and all the members comes as a general body, will be called as a general body. So these are the board members of a society. Whenever and for section 8 company, they are called as directors. Whenever you want to take a decision, so we have to call the board to take the cause, and by majority votes, the decision has to be taken up, and which will be implemented by the trust society or the section 8 company. And the property, regarding the property, if the trust or the society or the company owns the property, the trust property will be managed by the trustees and cannot be sold by the trustees without obtaining the permission from the court. So it is very difficult when you go and buy a property. You have to see whether it belongs to the trust. The trust property cannot be easily brought without the permission from the court. You have to move the court, get the order, and then only you can buy the property. So next is so most of the properties which are which cannot be sold, they will be considered as a litigation property. So in many places, so where the property that belongs to the trust, we are not able to sell them because of this problem. Like it's not a problem, it's a procedure. It's a lengthy procedure wherein it will take time to sell the property. Next is society. Society is the property rests with the society and in the name of the society, and it can be sold as per the bylaws. Like the bylaws will have a clause to sell the property. So as per the bylaws clause, the property can be sold by the society by the approval from the executive committee members and also by the general body. So and with this permission, they can sell the property. Next, as in the section 8 company, so as per the consent of the board members, by passing a resolution, they can sell the property. Next is revocation, dissolution or winding up. So the trust is irrevocable. If something happens to the trust members and if they want to dissolve the trust, they cannot do it. The trust can be merged with any other trust having a similar objective with the permission of the court. And for the society, it can be dissolved by having putting up a clause in the bylaws. As per the bylaws, they can dissolve the societies, and the may be distributed among the member of the society. The remaining funds and property must be given or transferred to some other society, preferably one with a similar objective. And for the Section 8 company, dissolution of company happens by surrendering the license and winding up as per the Companies Act. So annual compliance, like the statutory compliance has to be met by the trust, society and the company. So for the trust, so they need not file anything anywhere, but they must keep the books and the accounts properly. And for society, it is compulsory to file all the statutory dues to the Register of Societies. So they have to file the yearly audited accounts and the minutes and the change in the office bearers and any other additional members or removal of members that has to be communicated compulsorily to the society, Register of Societies. And for the company, that is the requirement of the compliance by the filing of the annual accounts and the returns to the Register of Companies. For the company, it has to be filed with the Register of Companies. For the societies, it has to be filed with the Register of Societies. It is compulsory for the society and as well as to Section 8 company to file the statutory obligations. Otherwise, they will be penalized. And in 2015, the government had wanted to check all the society and the trust, and they have, because of non-compliance of this statutory obligations, few companies were removed. Nearly 8,000 8,000 trusts and societies were removed from their positions. So it is it's mandatory to file the annual compliance to the concerned departments. So that is a question in everyone's mind. Like if you people have enormous fund and they are still doing the charity as per their will and wish. So say they are continuing for years also, and nothing. So they don't have any issues because it is a one-man show, or they would be doing within the family members. But when you want to involve many people, it is important to register. So why registration of an NGO is important is, so it will gain, first one is it will gain the legal status and also accountable for the funds received, because trust, societies and companies will receive enormous funds from outside, like not from the members alone, from the others also. They donate funds to the trust, to the societies and to the company. So there should be an accountability for the funds received. And the main purpose of registration is, like, whatever the funds you receive, so we need to get it operated only through the banks. So for getting the bank account, a registered document has to be submitted. So it is compulsory. In order to open an account, it is mandatory to be registered as a trust or as a society or as a section company. So otherwise you will not be allowed to open a bank account. So next is the important thing is the registration of the NGO is necessary to seek tax exemption and from the income tax authority. So unless you register, you won't get the tax exemption. So let us see what is the tax exemptions. So one is the registration under 12A, another one is registration under 80G. So 12A registration is for tax exemption. The NGOs that has been registered under this, so they will they cannot enjoy the, if you are not enrolling yourself in with the income tax department, you will not enjoy the tax exemption. So what is that you will be end up with paying the income tax. So in order to enjoy the tax exemption, it is compulsory to register under 12A. Before that, you have to file a form under the Income Tax Commissioner. Then later on, you have to file all the documents, whatever the registered trust deed or the society's registration document or the registration done under the Companies Act. So you have to file all the documents along with the necessary documents of the person who are in the position, like the trustees or the EC president or secretary of the society or the directors of the Section 8 company. So while producing these, you will be given the registration under 12A, and the NGO will be exempted from the tax. What is registration under ATG? ATG is for the donors benefit. So when somebody gives donation to the trust or to the society or to the company, they will be exempted from the tax. So, so in order to attract more donors, this registration under ATG is compulsory for the NGOs. And what are all the benefits you will get? The first thing is you can apply for grants from the government and international organizations. So few grants are there for the NGOs like to be used. So you will get the grants, and it becomes a valid proof for the NGOs. And they also, next thing is they will avail the taxes, and FCRA registration benefits, that foreign currency regulation act, like you will get the foreign currency only if you register under the registration under 12A, you will be allowed to get the FCRA. And also the donors can reap the benefits. So you will get more donors as a funding agent to run the trust or the society. Next is the features of the NGO. The synopsis is, it's a support democratic system. It should not go anything against the government. The NGOs cannot act anything against the government, and function on non-profit basis, non-political in character, clearly defined objectives. They should have a clear definition of the objectives for which they have started the trust or the society. Limited external control and voluntary character, and wide operational area, positive contribution, need financial support, interest in long-term projects. So, so they should have a long-term projects to carry on, to sustain in as an NGO. So the growth, why it is important in India. So because of the increasing population, as I said earlier, like because of the increasing population, so there is need from the underprivileged. So in order to cater to their needs, and in order to help the government in running smoothly, this NGOs growth of NGOs in India is very much welcome. And so let us serve the community. And with that, I conclude this NGO, and I will move on to the next topic of due diligence of properties. When you purchase the properties, you have to do proper due diligence. So what are all the basic thing is, like, see, there will be, you can be a buyer, but the seller can be either the individual owner. You can buy the property from an individual owner or from a developer. So what are all the basic tips? I will give the basic tips because of the time constraint. So I will give the basic tips. What are all the things you have to be careful while purchasing the property, either from the individual owner or from the developer? So one is, like, you have to be very careful with the title documents. That is the parent document, what we call it as a parent document, like the title document, whether it has been gifted or it has been bequeathed, the property was bequeathed by way of will or by way of settlement. So it has to be properly scrutinized with the help of an advocate to see the title documents. And next is the sanctioned plan layout. So it is like whether the area is free from any encumbrance, or that you have to be very much very careful. So you have to scrutinize this sanctioned plan layout. And the legal capacity of seller, like whether the seller is the legal owner of that property, that you have to see carefully. And whether he has paid all dues on taxes. And after completion, the builder has to give the occupation and the completion certificate. It is it's compulsory before like entering into a premises. After purchase and before entering into the premises, you have to be careful whether you got the occupation and the completion certificate. So without this, you cannot occupy the house. Or if you occupy the house without getting this, if anything happens, the builder will not be held liable for whatever the damages that happened to the buyers. So we have to be careful, even though the like in few cases, like when the builder is constructing the house or the apartments in the rural areas, so they might say saying that so it is not it doesn't come under CMDA, so it is not required for them to give the occupation and the completion certificate. It is not like that. So they have to give the occupation and completion certificate by with the help of a architect, like a chartered architect. They can give the occupation and the completion certificate, so which can be used. It's a legally acceptable document which can be used when there is any problem. When it comes, it will come for surely it comes for help. Then next is the allotment letter and the letter of possession, wherein it includes like all the documents. Next is the power of attorney. See, in most cases, the the property will be managed by the power agent. So you have to check like when this power of attorney has been executed, because the long like it's a date back power of attorney cannot be, because of maybe the owner might not be alive. So these are the problems. Now the register, see, that is a good thing that has happened recently. Like in the registrar's office, so they are asking for the life certificate of the own, like the person who is giving the power of attorney. So it is one thing protecting the buyer when they are going for a purchase from the power of attorney. Next is land records, including EC and Patta. So this is most important. Like you have to at least take the 30 years lease, that EC, encumbrance certificate, from the registrar's office, so that you will be knowing the history of the land. So who has purchased, whether that land has been, that particular property has been mortgaged, whether they have released from the mortgage. So all this history you can get to know only from the encumbrance certificate, that you will get it from the Register of Societies. So register office, sub-register office or register office in that particular area. And the Patta. So now the rule has come, like see, they are asking for the Patta. Earlier there was they will not ask, when you go for registration, they will not ask for the Patta. But now the rule has come that they are asking for the register. Even while registering the document, they are asking for the Patta. It's a good thing, so that so you will be knowing whether you are buying the land which has got the Patta, because certain lands cannot be considered as a Patta land, because those lands will be owned by the government. So it will be a lengthy process to check to get the Patta, convert the land from the land which it is defined in their books. So it will be difficult. So now getting the Patta is taking along with the Patta for registration is a good thing that is happening. So that also you have to be careful, that the people might still like, I will get the Patta later, but it should not, we should not allow it to happen. Then approval from the authorities regarding the construction, like the proper approval has to be obtained from the, either from the CMDA or from the local authorities. If it comes under the panchayat, then the panchayat has to be given all approved documents related to the construction and related to the land. So these are the things that you have to keep in your mind while purchasing the land. Next is see, when after from the individual owner, so they will give only if you buy the land without any construction, they will give you they will register the land by way of sale deeds. But buying a property from the developer or from the builder, see, either he will execute a sale deed or a construction agreement. So what you have to be very careful is, like the sale deed or the construction agreement should have the consideration amount, proper consideration amount. So some builders, they still take up the consideration amount in the sale deed itself, and some builder take the amount of the land alone while executing the sale deed, and while doing the construction agreement and registering it, they will add the entire consideration amount of the property. So these are the two things that is happening. And in some builders, they are taking they are making only the sale date, putting everything in the as a consideration amount in the sale date, and the construction agreement will not be registered properly, and they consider it as the memorandum of understanding between the buyer and the seller. So in that also you have to be very careful, to see all the clauses, whether he has included everything in the construction agreement, because it is the only contract between the builder and the buyer. This construction agreement is only based on this construction agreement, the contract between the builder and the buyer will start. Whatever he has mentioned, he has to execute it in the construction agreement. So, and also nowadays the builders are promising so many amenities which they are not including in the construction agreement. So that has to be like while doing the construction agreement, the buyers should be aware of the annexes. They should be more like there will be written documents for 10 to 15 pages, and there will be annexes. In the annexes, the builder will be including what are all the amenities he has promised to the buyers. That also you have to look into it, whether he has signed those annexes, and you also have signed the annexes, because signing by one party will be, it is also acceptable in the court, like whether the contract will be executed. But so you have to be, as a buyer, like we have to be very careful whether both the parties have signed in the annexes also. So these are the things that you have to be like focusing while buying the property. No, and after buying the property, like for the in the apartments, like after forming the association, in some apartments the builder he himself forms the association, and in some apartments the builder will not interfere with the members. The members has to form the association. So after forming the association, it is mandatory that the builder has to hand over all the documents that is related to that construction, starting from the, like the earlier speaker has said, no, EIA certificate, starting from the EIA certificate to the last NOC from all authorities. He has to hand over everything to the association. It is mandatory. And also what are all the money he has collected from the buyers, like a corpus fund, and like a 1 year advance payment for maintaining the apartments, everything has to be handed over to the association. So in recent days, you can find so many associations are struggling to get the money from the builder, and the builder on one fine day, he is leaving the premises without handing over any of the documents and even the money which was collected from each individual buyers. So now the associations are struggling to manage the apartments, running the facilities. So it is mandatory, even though you need not be part of, like you need not become the EC member, but as a part of the owner of that particular apartment, it is your responsibility to see that the builder is at the time of leaving the apartment premises, he should hand over everything to the association properly. So with this, so I think I have given a brief insight of the NGOs, and also
a couple of quick questions to you, ma'am. We have some questions from our participants, ma'am. So one is, ma'am, is there any single window registration to form an NGO, ma'am?
Single, no, it is like see, either the trust NGO is like a trust under the Trust Act, society under the Societies Act, and the company under the Companies Act. Only you can form the NGO. There is no like after registering these trust, society, and the company under the respective authorities, we can send we can file in the central government for registration. That is no, you cannot directly register as a NGO. So there need to be some form of registration done under the particular act formed by the government.
Ma'am, in case if you are buying a flat from a promoter, could you give us some quick tips as to what we should give more attention to, ma'am?
Already I have given the majority of the tips. That first thing is like the parent document. See, what happens is, like, most of the people are going for the home loans, so they think like the banks will take care of the parent document and the legality of the documents. But even then, there are some many cases are coming up. Like in most of the builders, they mortgage in two different banks. So so the all the problems will come to the owners only. The builder will get scot free. So that you have to check with a private, like you have to have a separate advocate and check whether the property is a clean titled property. And next is free from encumbrance. When you take the encumbrance certificates, see, in encumbrance EC, you will not find whether the property has been mortgaged in the banks unless it gets registered in the register office. See, there won't be any kind of mechanism to check whether it will be not reflect in the EC. So see, they will most of the builders, they keep the property as a collateral security in the banks, and they get the loan, and they start the construction. And in the meantime, they will also mortgage in another bank for getting more like money. So this happens in majority of the cases. So that we have to check only with the help of the advocates. So these two things are the main issues in buying a property. The remaining issues can be solved in the due course of time. But these two things, most of the people are struggling now because they were not able to come out of this the problem. Because even when they approach the court, also the court say it will take time, as you all know that the court immediately will not give any compensation or anything. But it will take time. Now even it supports the buyers who have been cheated by the builders, but it all takes time. So in order to keep ourselves in inconvenience and in tension, so to relieve from everything, like you have to check these two the basic things, basic documents that has to be scrutinized with the help of the advocate.
Wonderful. One last question, ma'am. In case if a person wants to write a will, should it be registered will, ma'am, or it can just be probate? There's a difference between probation and just registration. Can you explain about that in brief, ma'am?
Yeah. See, will can be either registered or it cannot be. It need not be registered. But if you register a will, it has to be probated through court. Then only the will can come live. So see, most of the people, instead of it is between the people who are coming to me for consultation, I will see that it is within the family members. If the family members doesn't cooperate or doesn't have a good understanding with each other, so no way like you can write the will without the registration. So it is compulsory for the people to go for the registration. So it all depends. It can be registered or it cannot be. It need not be registered also. But when you register a will, surely it needs to be probated by in the court. It's a simple process. It's not a big process. To have a safe after the death of that person, to have a good understanding and to have a peaceful peace in the family, it's better to register the will.
Yes. Ma'am, we would like to thank you very much on behalf of all the participants, myself, our institution. We would like to thank you very much. In spite of your busy schedule, you have been with us. We explained in detail about how a NGO, trust or association is formed, how it functions, what are the various functions about it, and you have given us a good explanation about properties, what should one pay importance to before buying a property, where generally problems occurs. You have enlightened us on all those aspects. On behalf of everyone and myself, we would like to thank you very much, ma'am, for enlightening us and spending this wonderful time this evening, ma'am. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Yeah,
wonderful to have you again with us, ma'am.
Yeah, good evening to all.
So, ma'am, I'll start directly with the questions, ma'am.
Yes.
So, I have a question from a professor called Daniel from Petition College. So, if I'm getting into a joint venture with a property developer, what are the commitments from my part and from his part? How to safeguard our interest?
Yeah. Sir, Daniel, sir, are you there? I don't know. It's okay. See, it's a common question. Like everyone should be knowing the answer. Like it's a joint venture. Let me explain what is joint venture. because most of the people would be hearing for the first time. It's like mostly it's the term that is used as JV. So joint venture is the arrangement between the landowner and the builder. So the landowner contributes the land, and the builder undertakes the responsibilities of first obtaining all the relevant permissions and the property development, and for launching and for marketing and selling of the property with the help of his financial resources. So this is the joint venture, the meaning of the joint venture. So there are few risks in joint venture, doing the joint venture. That is, one is like there will be delay in handing over of the property because of the delay in getting the licenses, clearances, etc. And the second one is that real estate policies might change if there is any change that comes in the real estate policies, that will also delay the handing over of the construction. And the third one is that if there is any change in the IT department, then the whatever the taxes and other things will immediately get changed. So these are the three major risks that the landowners has to face. So this is common to everyone. So see on the main thing regarding the builder. So what are all the things that has to be taken care of? One is due diligence has to be done for the builder with whom he is going to enter into the joint venture, and his background check has to be done, and his credibility has to be done, and also his success rate has to be seen. So the proper due diligence has to be carried out by the landowner before entering into a joint venture. So or otherwise he will end up in a problem, and in most of the cases, so many cases are still pending in the courts because of even after entering the joint venture for past 10-15 years, a few cases wherein no construction activities have been started till date. So see, you have to be very careful. See, some people to frankly say that if they get more money, they won't look into all the background check of the builder. That is not the right thing. So what all landowners has to do is whether that builder is capable of completing the construction. So his credibility has to be checked. So that is the main thing. And second thing is it's easier to do in order to safeguard the landowner is they can register a company in their name, and the property can be transferred to the books of the company, and the company can enter into the joint venture with the other company, the builder's company. So this way he can protect himself from the builder when there is any discrepancies happens. So next one is what he has to be very careful is so let me explain say what are all the things that he has to do in the joint venture procedure. The first thing is he has to enter into a joint venture agreement. Okay, in the joint venture agreement, so he has to see the second one is he has to have a power of attorney agreement, and the third one is the construction agreement. And if required, he has to enter into an allocation agreement also. See, in some cases, this allocation will be entered into the construction agreement or in the joint venture agreement itself. So that these four things, the landowner should be very careful in executing this the four agreements. One is joint venture agreement. Second one is power of attorney, giving rights to the builder to get the approvals and other things regarding that particular property. And the third one is the construction agreement, so how the construction should be happen, and the time limits, everything will be incorporated in the construction agreement. And next one is the allocation agreement, how many units that were allocated to him. So in the joint venture agreement, so what are all the things he has to be careful in executing is so one is the profit sharing. So where the builders have the habit of giving some token amount and entering into some agreement, and they will start the construction, and at the later point of time, they will be, the landowner will be put into trouble. So he has to be careful while doing this. He has to be very clear in while mentioning about the profit. See, like one third of the whatever the land value or the place value, the one third has to be given to the landowners in most of the cases, and two-third will be held by the builder. This has to be calculated as per the number of units he is going to construct in that particular property, and the number of floors he is going to construct, and the that the size of the property, that square feet of the property, square feet of the each unit, that has to be calculated, and based on that, that one-third calculation has to be done. Because few flats will be larger in size and few flats will be smaller in size. See, the number should not be taken into account. The square feet of the total square feet, in that you have to calculate one-third of the share by the owner. And next is like the main thing is like people forget about the capital gains, what they are going to gain out of the property development. So the builder as well as the landowner has to sit, discuss about what is the actual value of the property and what is the gain both will be gaining, because there should be like similarity while entering into the books of accounts in both sides, on both sides. Okay, so this has to be discussed and entered into the agreement properly. So these are the four main things that the landowner has to be careful while entering into the power of attorney. Like it's better to take the advice when they want to enter any legal document with any company, the builder company. So please take the legal help and do it along with the advocate. So otherwise, a few things the landowners might not be. See, most of the landowners will be at the crisis of some debts. So in order to clear the debts, they will enter into the JV and get the token amount, and they forget about all these main areas. So please be careful while entering into the joint venture with the builder. So I think I'm clear with the clarification is quite
yes,
sufficient. Yeah.
Yes, ma'am.
Time being.
The next question is, ma'am, in case if a group of people want to start a school, college, or educational institution, should they go to register a trust or an association, or what is your suggestion, ma'am, and how they should proceed ahead, ma'am?
Yeah. See here, association is like it's a name. It's a like it's association will not come into place. So they can form a trust, and they have to register the trust under the in the sub-registrar's office of that particular area, and or they can form a society and get it registered under the register of societies. So association will not like the name association is not correct term that can be used. So either they can form the trust or the society.
Okay, wonderful. Ma'am, what is the procedure to add or remove new members to a trust or association, ma'am?
Yeah, trust is like they have the trustees, and they will be having an auditor and the treasurer. So and the managing trustee. So in the trust document itself, a clause is there and will be there. So as per that clause, they can remove the trust. Like there will be change in the the members, the trustees. So if the main trustee will be permanently will be there, and the remaining trustees can be changed as per the clause, as mentioned in the clause of the trustee agreement. So if they have mentioned like in every 3 years they can be changed, then as per that they can change. But removing is like, see, like again, it is like the board has to decide. See, the trust board, the trustees along with the other trust members, they can sit in a easy meeting, and they can divide, they can decide and remove the members as per the board. And regarding the association, similarly, a member can be removed when there is a clause which mentions how the member can be removed. If there is no clause in the general body meeting, they can remove the members. But after removing the members, they have to give the chance to the member why, for justifying his action, because the removal will be of different ways. like for not obeying the rules and regulations of the bylaws. So for that, he should be given a chance to justify his on his side. So the board can decide to reinstate the member also, or they can remove the member. So, and also if he is a defaulter, say regarding the members, say if he is a defaulter means if there is a membership fees or anything that has been collected by the association, if he defaults in making the payment, then he becomes a defaulter. So as per the defaulters clause in the association, so if it says that for 3 months default done by a member, he can be removed. And once after making the payment, he can again be reinstated as a member. So these are the ways that we can remove the members of our association and the trust. So everything, see, the board, the general body for the association, the general body can decide on the removal of the members. Okay, in the trust, the board can decide on the removal of the trustees.
Ma'am, wonderful, ma'am. So thank you very much, ma'am, for waiting so patiently and trying to explain the questions of all the participants. So நீங்க நேத்து participate பண்ணி இன்னைக்கு எங்களுக்காக participate, you have enlightened us on various aspects. So on behalf of all the participants, myself, our institution, we would like to thank you very much, ma'am.
Thank you, Joshua. இது வந்து நானும் பார்த்துட்டு இருக்கேன் இந்த 3 நாளா. இன்னைக்கும் சைலன்ஸ் ஸ்பெக்டேட்டரா இருந்தேன் நான். ரொம்ப நல்லா இருந்தது எல்லா டாபிக்குமே. And you have selected the speakers in such a way, like ரொம்ப நல்ல பேசக்கூடிய நபர்கள் எல்லாம் தேர்ந்தெடுத்து ரொம்ப அழகா பண்ணிருக்கீங்க. இது இந்த வருஷம் லா சமிட் 3 நாள் பண்ணிருக்கீங்க. இது அடுத்த ஆண்டுகள்ல வந்து வரக்கூடிய ஆண்டுகள்ல இது வந்து கொஞ்சம் எக்ஸ்டெண்ட் பண்ணிட்டு இன்னும் கொஞ்சம் நிறைய ஸ்பீக்கர்ஸ் கொடுக்கலாம். ஈவன் தோ இந்த கொரோனா பீரியட்னால நம்ம வர்ச்சுவல்ல பண்ணிட்டு இருக்கோம், but it can continue because virtual is like making us convenient to sit at home and listen to good speakers. நான் போய் ஒரு இடத்துல உட்காந்துட்டு எனக்கு டிஸ்டர்பன்ஸ் இருந்து நான் கேட்கல, ரொம்ப காமா உட்காந்து கேட்க முடியாது. You can keep doing it even after the relaxation of the corona இருந்தா கூட continue doing it virtually so that it will benefit a mass. See, so much of information எல்லாரும் கொடுத்திருக்காங்க. It will benefit a mass, and all the best for all your endeavors. Thank you for giving me.
Thank you very much, ma'am. Thank you very much, ma'am.